You like this in terms of, council was briefed on this report in 2014. It wasn't told how many members of council, which members of council, and not even what they did, but there are substantiated breaches of the respectful workplace policy. So can you tell us how you achieve accountability for the people who broke the rules if council, the only body that can sanction, doesn't know who they are?
It's a fair and excellent question. When these allegations were first brought forward to me in the summer of 2014, we suddenly realized that we had no mechanism for dealing with complaints against members of council, because the whistleblower process was both inadequate and didn't really apply to members of council. Also, council were the only ones who could sanction, but the very act of, because it was the councillor's own workplace, the very act of revealing the nature of the complaints would expose the whistleblowers within the councillor's own workplace. The second challenge that we had is that council employees, unlike the mayor's office employees or anyone else in the city, work directly for the councillor. And so there is a different sort of employer-employee relationship. So we hired an external advisor to come in and tell us what was going on. And what he really came up with is that while there were some substantiated breaches, the real issue here was a systemic one around workplace protection for the members of council staff, as well as no real clear mechanism for how members of the public could complain or whistleblow, if you like, against members of council. So the real outcome of that report was completely changing the system. And this was long before Me Too or anything else, and we realized that we really have to be very, very careful to protect the integrity of the people who work for city councillors, as well as make sure that the public has an opportunity to be able to bring forth complaints about city councillors. So we created the first ever ethics commissioner or ethics advisor and integrity commissioner offices in Canada, as well as the first integrity commissioner process in Western Canada. And now the process is pretty straightforward. The complaints go to the integrity commissioner. If they are substantiated, they are made public. Council still does not have, and we have whistleblower protections in place, which we didn't have at the time. So councillors council still does not have the ability to sanction members. There's a couple of small things we can do, but there's no real power. But the real power here is that the report becomes public. And that is part of the court of public opinion. That's really what we learned through this process, that we needed to find a way to be able to make the allegations public while protecting the whistleblower. And that simply didn't exist in 2014. It exists now.
So the transgressors, they got away with it then, essentially, but today you're saying
I'm not so sure they got away with it, if I would use that term, because certainly, we went through training for all of council. We redeveloped the system completely, and as Councillor Woolley has pointed out, there were apologies made as well.
So for the ones that have been substantiated, because you mentioned before, now you have a process where if something is substantiated, it will be made public. So for the ones Scott's reporting that are substantiated, are we going to know who those councillors are?
No,
what's going to happen to those councillors?
No, we couldn't do that because the legal protections at that time didn't exist. And that report, because it's a very small workplace as well, and that report did not have the protections in place to protect the whistleblowers. So, we can't change the law retroactively. But what we did immediately when we realized there was a hole is we fixed it.
I'm curious to know as well, the city fought this all the way through the FOIA process, arguing that they wanted to protect the whistleblowers. The city solicitor recently said in council, whistleblowers do not have protection of FOIA. Can you swear to that for me?
I could try to.
I'm not interested in any of the whistleblowers.
No, I could try to. What happened here is that the city's law department, acting, I think, in really good faith, understood that there were not clear protections in the Freedom of Information legislation to protect whistleblowers, and they really wanted to test the limits because, of course, if the information commissioner orders the release of something, we have to release it. But they really wanted to understand what the information commissioner's view was on how much of the whistleblower identity could be protected. And really the only way to test that was to actually go through this laborious process. So I would have loved to have been able to release what was released earlier. It protects the whistleblowers, it's very redacted. But the city didn't have the ability to do that without really understanding what the Information Commissioner's point of view on whistleblower protection was. And my understanding is the only way to do that was to go through this long, ridiculous process.
So Councillor Woolley has let his name stand.
Yes.
Now, clerk.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. It's redacted, redacted, Councillor Woolley, redacted, redacted.
So
Yeah.
why can't the other councillors' names be let go in a redacted report in the same way? And
Well, as you know, Councillor Woolley waived his right to privacy under the previous legislation. That is still an option that would be available to the others. That's a decision they have to make.
So just to be clear here, so there's it doesn't sound like there is going to be any accountability for what happened out of that report.
There can't be, because the law was different then, so there just simply can't be.
How do you feel about that, given the nature of some of these allegations?
I know more about these allegations than others do, and the real issue here was that the consultant that we hired really mentioned that, look, there were a number of these incidents. These incidents are actually not the problem. These are things that have by and large been dealt with. The problem is that you're operating in a system where these incidents can happen, and you're operating in a system where there are two real big problems. People have nowhere to complain, and it's very difficult to protect the rights of the whistleblower. So go fix that. That was really the big recommendation that came out of this. So we did. We fixed it. You may recall that we also took council through training on how to be better bosses and how to manage a respectful workplace, since they are, 14 individual bosses. And we created the new system as well. So those are really the two big. I'm sorry. There was a third thing, which is really important. So let's back up. We gave council training on how to be better bosses in a respectful workplace. We made the human resources tools that are available to any city employee also available to council staff, so that they actually do have somewhere to go now. And we created the Integrity Commissioner and Ethics Advisor positions. So not only did we meet the recommendations of the report, we went far beyond.
does this leave a cloud over the other members of council, not the four joining council, but for the other members of council who may or may not have been involved in the process?
And look, this is very unfortunate. And that is really why we fixed the process, so that that cloud doesn't exist going forward.
I have to wrap this up, folks. We've got a councillor to get to. Last question.
I'll take these two. And then we'll go.
Your message then to the whistleblowers who may not have seen the people who made their lives miserable get punished, what's your message to them?
That we're protecting you. That, despite the fact that you're on a personal contract with the councillor, you deserve the rights of every other employee of the City of Calgary, and you deserve to be able to go to work every day and do your best possible job. And we've worked hard to fix that while making sure that your identity is also protected should there be a problem.
In a scenario like 2014 with the new system, what's going to be different? Our council's name?
Yeah, so what would happen under the current system that's been in place since 2015 or 2016? What would happen under the current system is if there was a complaint about a councillor, that would go to the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner then has three choices. One is to kind of say this is frivolous, and then it just kind of ends there. The second is to say this can be dealt with by mediation between the parties, in which case it goes to the ethics advisor who will facilitate that process, or he can launch an investigation. If he launches an investigation and the results are substantiated, then that report becomes public.